Welcome everybody. In this video, I'm going to teach you guys how you can always beat the newest disgusting creation of Riot Games, Riven mid lane. Yes, it's absolutely filthy. And I'm going to just put it out there. Riven mid is broken and she's very hard to beat. But I'm going to give you guys all the tips, tricks, share all of the secrets that is going to put the next matchups that you're going to be playing into this champion in your advantage. So, first and foremost, what does this champion, this Riven champion, want to do? Riven is a skirmisher, okay? And the way that she goes through the lane is by winning the trades. If you look at her kit, she's got a bit of wave clear, but she's got exceptionally strong trading tools due to her E, giving her, of course, the shield. And she's got mobility to get close towards you, and she's got just generally high damage. At a certain point, she gets a lot of wave clear as well. And with that mobility, she's then going to look to try and roam around the map. But let's just start with levels 1 to 6. Because Riven has a very specific trade-heavy playstyle that she's going to be playing. So, the key thing to keep in mind is that Riven is only a melee range champion. So she needs to find a way to get onto you to be effective. And if she cannot find a way to get onto you to be effective, then this champion doesn't really work. So if you're playing a range champion, what you got to keep in mind is that you just got to play in such a way that you do not allow her to get close. And it doesn't really matter if you then don't use your spells or just hold spells. As long as she doesn't get close, she doesn't really get the ability to interact with you guys. If you're playing a vulnerable mage that she likes to all in, right? She has a lot of mobility, she can get close. Then make sure that you take bone plating, because this is going to heavily deny her ability to then get close to you. And because if she then does, you can kind of stat check her with the damage reduction that you get from the bone plating rune. She has no way of proccing it off. Bone plating is a cheat code. Now, in this specific example, I'm going to be playing LeBlanc versus Riven. I got a little bit of a misfortunate start because this Olaf was hiding there and he all in me. I lost flash and I lost the first 3 minions of experience. So it's not that good of a start. But this VOD is really going to showcase how you want to be playing into Riven trade-wise. So the way I'm going to be trading into her is I'm going to take very small win-oriented trades. Sometimes Riven will take D-Shield, sometimes we'll take Doran's Helm, sometimes they'll take Doran's Blade. So you got to keep in mind which starting items that she took. In this case, the Helm makes it actually very hard for her to now sustain me up in the lane here. If she takes D-Shield, she doesn't skill that well in the skirmishes. If she takes D-Blade, it's the same story. It's pretty hard for her to then actually keep sustain up in the lane. And what we identify in this game is that if I W forward onto her, she's going to be able to hit back at me. She's going to be able to E at me and then extend the trade. And because I got no cooldowns, I'm going to get blasted. So the way I want to trade into Riven is just very small win oriented. I want her to come into me to get access to these minions. You got to keep in mind that this meta champ needs to move into you to get access to the creeps. And because of that, you can just hit her like that. Just give her a nice little tap with the auto attack with some longer range spells that you have where you commit less. And you want to just very slowly chip away their health bar. The moment you like W in, she is, or like you use like your key trading tool, like for example, REE, Syndra E. The moment you use one of those spells, she's going to full send it onto you. She's going to beat you extremely hard in the trade. That's something that you want to be very careful with. So you want to take very slow, small win-oriented trades where you force her to come onto you, closer towards the creeps. And then if she ever overcommits or like uses one of her dashing spells or has no cooldowns, that's when you can actually use your own dashing spells or like your defensive spells, where you then prevent her getting close to you because she cannot really extend the trade because she has got no cooldowns. But you see that in this position, I'm just slow pushing away and there's nothing that she can do against that. When it comes to your summoners, okay? A big mistake into Riven is not going for offensive summoners. This Riven champ is bullshit because she's going to go defensive stats like no magic mantle into Hex Drinker, or she's going to go like some other defensive stuff like claw armor, and she's going to make it incredibly hard to actually break through her so she can then extend the fights around her shorter cooldowns because she's going to get a lot of CDR. And that's how she eventually wins skirmishes, especially post level 6. So my favorite recommendation is to opt in for either Ignite or Exhaust. This is going to completely counter the way that she wants to fight. And it's going to be way harder for her to find these all-in angles because you have either higher thresholds yourself or you can deny her thresholds with Exhaust. Those are great tips to make it harder for her to play. You see that this first time where I actually use my W forward, she just shields this. This is the power of Riven. And she then steps up and kind of zones me away from the minions. She can now take up space in the lane. This is something you'd like to avoid. You want to be quite careful with that. So you want to be extremely cautious with your spell usage. Otherwise, she's going to absolutely blast you. You got to keep in mind that Riven is a champ that can play the War of Attrition due to the fact that she has shields, of course, and no mana. And that makes it very easy for her to play either the HP war or the mana war or the energy war. Whatever war that she wants to play, she can play it. So I'm just weaving in these auto attacks. And I'm not using any major spells to prevent her opportunities to actually get close to us. And you see that you slowly get a bit of lane control. You can then zone her off the wave because it's a full melee champion. And it's incredibly hard for her to then access the minion wave. So this is a really good way to play into Riven. Small win-oriented mindset. That's how you beat this champion on mid lane. Riven's rarely go like the D shield because she only does that in like Giga Poke champs because she doesn't like to do that because they run the Jack of all trades, right? And want Doran's Blade or the Doran's Helm for the Jack of all trade stats. And eventually when she overcommits for like cannons like this, for example, that's where you can drop your full load and make it incredibly hard for her to actually sustain here in the lane. So we took some good quality trades. Eventually Bard shows up. I give her some fake info and I do a nice little solo kill. And just purely by taking good quality trades. If you win the trades, guys, you're going to be totally fine. But you got to space her and prevent her from getting close to you. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that post level 6, this champion is going to be a different kind of beast. Because post level 6, she has insane all-in ranges where she can basically 100 to 0 you with Ignite. Like you will die 100 to 0 if you're like a classic mage or anything like that. She took Hex Drinker and you see what happens. I just get completely one-tapped. Of course, I misplay this disastrously with my mechanics, but this is what Riven will aim to do. So you see how she uses her spells to get then close to you, and that puts her in a position where she can just completely all in. And she will 100 to 0 because she gets an immense amount of AD with her R. If you look at her stats right now, she has 109 AD. The moment she actually full sends it with her Conqueror, which she stacks up incredibly fast, and her R, she has 160 AD. So she deals 52 AD. What are we talking about, right? But if you have bone plating or exhaust, you can prevent this from happening. You can just stand your ground like that. Of course, shit execution by me, but it just shows Riven's strength. Like, this is what this champion is, like, incredibly good at. This is what she'll do. This is how she's going to beat you. Now, starting from this position, like, especially when she gets, like, multiple points in her Q and a little bit of AD, what they're going to start doing is they're going to start roaming. This champion is really mobile on the map. She nukes the wave really fast because she gets a little bit of AD. She can kill these caster minions. She can use her shield forward and then start nuking the wave and then move into ganking sides. So you want to be extremely cautious of her ganking sides because a lot of these Riven players will actually completely take over the side by just perma roaming. So you got to have good quality communication and ping your team back. Sometimes they will over roam. You can then punish that by either getting resources yourself or be in a position where you can maybe counter the roam and actually look for good quality skirmishes. But you got to keep in mind that Riven is a skirmish-oriented champion. This is what her champion does. And you don't really want to be playing her game because she's filthy overpowered at that game. Now, a few more things to keep in mind about Riven, right? You want to keep her at a distance. You want to keep her at range. If you fail to do so, you will die. If you are able to do that, then you're going to be in a really good spot where you can make it extremely hard for her to lane. Especially once you get ahead, it's really hard for her to get back because she's a full melee champion and she's a bit of a threshold champ. If she cannot hit the red thresholds, she's incredibly useless. If she does hit the thresholds, that's when you're going to get completely blasted and one-shots. And bone plating is a really good tool, same as exhaust, to help you with these thresholds or ignite. Now, there's certain champions that do incredibly well into Riven. One of these champions is Ahri. Most Riven players will either ban Ahri because of the fact that Ahri completely counters a kit. Ahri can use her W to kite Riven whenever she comes in. And the moment Riven is a very linear champion, Riven can then also get charmed the moment she actually tries to dash onto the Ahri. And Ahri can R away the moment Riven tries to all in. Ahri is a great champion to play in the Riven mid. Akali is a great champion to play into Riven mid because Riven needs to step up closely. You can make it hard for her to extend the trades and you can constantly chip her down onto her last hits because Riven needs to get incredibly close. Syndra is a great champion to play into the Riven mid for the exact same reason. Your E can keep her at a distance. You have a burst-oriented champion. You can kite her, free stack every single time that she goes for last hits. So if you have the tools to pick one of these champs, these are like really good champions into Riven. And Barrier or Exhaust or Ignite are, in my opinion, the tools that you want to be running into her because of how threshold heavy that she is. Final thing to note, in the mid game, she's going to be able to beat almost any side laner, even if you're playing one of these champs mentioned, unless you're far ahead, of course. Once again, she's a threshold champ. That's just the reality of Riven, right? Don't try to 1v1 her in the side. She will get prio. Try to shove a move, brute force when she's not there. She's generally not running TP, so you can potentially use this opportunity to create number advantage plays. And the final thing that you got to be careful of versus really good Riven players is that they'll do the Q delay trick. What is the Q delay trick? Is that they're going to preemptively Q, and the Q already starts going cooldown upon the first Q cast. So what's going to happen is that they're going to get passive stacks, which is going to give her extra damage on her auto attacks, and she's going to get a lot of mobility. So by her Q delaying, what she can do is she can then E forward with her third Q, and then her next Q already comes back up because her Q cast cooldown started on her initial Q. So you want to be very careful for Rivens that are just queuing in the lane. she's actually building up a lot of extra damage and mobility with that. If you want to know exactly how that works, my recommendation is to check out Alois NL, him playing Riven. The only thing I hear him talk about whenever he plays Riven and he's streaming is, I'm Q delaying here. I'm Q delaying here. Oh, I just did a Q delay. He's a fucking amazing streamer. Great educational. Dude, you just watch one Riven game of him and you'll know forever how to beat this champ, okay? Because he's only talking about this Q delay nonsense. It's too funny. Regardless, right? These are the big tips to play the Riven. Final thing to note as well is anti-heal is a must in the mid game because they're running this healing-oriented build. If you struggle on the Riven, it's totally normal. This champ is absolutely freaky on mid lane. I hope Riot does something about it. But here's the tools that you have to give the best possible game into the Riven. And if you ever die in lane in the 1v1, figure out why you died. Try to understand from the enemy's perspective, from her perspective, what happened. And then learn from it and see if you can prevent it or like bait it out in the future. She's vulnerable to ganks because once she's in, it's hard for her to get out unless she has a new batch of cooldowns. Now, if you struggle into Riven, you guaranteed struggle into Qiyana. So for that matchup breakdown, check it out right here.